Hello and welcome to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're happy to be joined by April Verrett of SCIU Union Local 2015. April, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm good. I'm good in the midst of it all.
Yeah, relatively speaking.
Indeed.
For our listeners out there, there's so many different unions and numbers. Can you kind of, I guess, give us a little background on your union and kind of, who you guys represent?
I'd love to. SEIU 2015 represents 400,000 long-term care workers across the state of California.
Wow.
Literally from the Oregon border to the Mexican border. We represent home care workers and nursing home workers, folks who are essential workers, who do the work of taking care of our seniors and our sisters and brothers and neighbors living with disabilities who need a little bit of help, whether they need help at home or they are living in a skilled nursing facility.
Wow, definitely, has been resonated lately with COVID-19. And I guess yourself personally, April, kind of, I guess, how did you begin working with SCIU Local 2015 and kind of what's a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm a Chicago girl. I'm born and raised on the south side of Chicago, and that's where I started my career organizing about 19 years ago. And I started early organizing workers, healthcare workers. I started with hospital workers and nurses and, grew up organizing, helping workers build organizations to build power and, spent the good 19 years doing that and rose up and became an officer in my local union in Chicago and came out here in 2015 when our local was being created to bring together the power of long-term care workers across the state. Before that time, long-term care workers were in different local unions, but we had a vision that if you put all long-term care workers into one statewide local, we would be able to build more power for these workers. And so that's what I did. I came out to California in 2015 to help create this local, and here we are.
Wow. So I guess 5 years you've been out here. I guess, how are you adjusting to the West Coast and kind of, I guess, where have you settled in here in the state?
So I live in Los Angeles. You can't beat the weather.
Right.
But today I just was watching my White Sox beat up on the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
So there are definitely things I miss about Chicago. It's where my family is. It's such a huge part of who I am and why I do what I do. But I believe California offers the opportunity to really create and drive transformational change. And I'm happy to be here and couldn't be anywhere else.
So that's pretty amazing. I guess before you showed up 5 years ago, there was no statewide representation of these workers. And, you've come in here and I guess unified them. Is that correct?
I was a part of a team that unified these workers across the state. But I believe that our power comes from the collective, whether it's our 400,000 members standing strong together, leading their union, or myself and the team of officers that I work with. And of course, our staff team. I stand and ride on the shoulders of a lot of folk, both personally and professionally, that make it possible for me to lead an amazing union.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. Just kind of 400,000, I guess, compared to other unions, kind of where does that rank you guys in comparison to some of these other larger unions in the state?
So we are the largest local union in the state of California. We are the largest union in the country that represents long-term care workers. And of course, we're really proud of being a part of the international union of SEIU. And we're the second largest local union in our national union.
Wow, fascinating. Well, I guess you guys organized and got together just in the kind of the right moment because 2020, long-term care facilities has kind of been in focus this year due to COVID-19. Can you kind of talk to us, I guess, how your workers are handling this and how they're faring through this crisis?
Sure. When I became president of our local about 18 months ago, I began saying to our staff and members that we were built for this moment. And I was talking about 2020 because we expected this to be a year that we would be focused on the election, on making sure we were able to create the conditions to change our country electorally. Little did we know that 2020
Right.
would be a year like no other, but the same is true. We were made for this moment. Our members are amazingly resilient. They're strong, they're fighters, and they are loving, caring people. And so it's with that resilience and fight and grit and love that they made sure they took care of people who needed to be taken care of during this pandemic and did the very, very best that they could under really hard circumstances. And my hat goes off to our nursing home workers in particular, who have really been in the eye of the storm of this pandemic. And I think not enough credit is given to them for continuing to work under really dangerous conditions to make sure folks living in skilled nursing facilities were able to get the care that they need and deserve.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We had Assemblymember Nazarian on earlier this year and kind of talked a lot about long-term care facilities. Kind of, I guess, kind of what are your, top issues kind of rolling into 2021 in terms of these long-term care facilities and, protections for your workers?
Sure. So we believe that we need in our state a whole entire system of long-term care that can meet the needs of a growing and aging population in California. We know that seniors is the largest growing demographic in our state. And today, our long-term care system is not adequately positioned to meet the needs of those who are going to need care. It wasn't ready before COVID, and it's certainly not ready after COVID. And we believe we need to work with the state, with employers in the long-term care space, with advocates to reimagine what long-term care looks like in California. What services need to be made available to people, whether it's home and community-based services, facility-based services, or something in between. And how can we imagine the services that will be delivered in a way that also meets the needs of a workforce? Our members have 3 priorities. We want to make sure we receive wages and benefits that reflect the value of the work that we do. We want training opportunities that lead to career advancement. And we want to work in conditions that are free of harassment and discrimination.
This year we had kind of a budget crunch, and it's looking like it will continue into 2021. A lot of state workers kind of listen to this, and they're always wondering, kind of, are we looking into pay cuts? What's the future going to look like? Furloughs, et cetera. Just before you got here in 2010, a lot of state workers took some big hits. Kind of, I guess, how do your members fare, I guess, through this budget this year, and how are you guys looking, into next year with these budget difficulties?
Sure. So one issue that our members have been continuing to battle since the 2008, 2010 budget cuts was that the program, the IHSS program that our members work in, sustained a 7% across the board cut. And though we have been able to, over time, have that cut restored, it's not been a permanent restoration. And so every year, our members go to the state legislature asking that the 7% is restored for yet another year. And we've been able to do that. Unfortunately, in this year's budget, the 7% cut was put back on the table, along with a whole other host of cuts that we know we face because of the economic downturn. Thankfully, we were able to get a reprieve. We know that there will be some cuts that will happen, in October, unless the federal government takes action. But we are looking at the 7% cut to go back into effect sometime next year. So we're hoping and fighting that we won't see that cut, because we think it is short-sighted to cut a program that is designed to keep people safe and out of nursing homes when, the nursing home situation is unfortunately not safe, right? That we've seen during the course of this pandemic. So in addition, to fighting the old cuts and just kind of keeping the program whole, we want to make sure that the budget is expanding long-term care services, as I talked about before. Let's get people who can, be cared for in a home setting where they want to be cared for, not. Let's focus on doing that and moving funds in that direction so that we can meet the needs of an aging population in our state in the safest way possible.
Yeah, I guess kind of the last few years we've kind of seen, technology kind of invade into spaces kind of where organized labor, exists, and kind of we're seeing this kind of fight on the ballot this year. I guess, kind of talking with you in the terms of long-term care, I guess, is there any, relationship or technology that you guys are seeing that maybe can help you achieve kind of exactly what you're talking about, providing care in home versus, bringing people to, facilities?
Yeah, part of the vision that we have for a way to deliver long-term care services is using technology, using platforms that once we know workers, right, are trained and can possibly get certified. Let's say, you have an uncle who needs someone who knows how to take care of someone with diabetes. Let's use technology to be able to match up caregivers who have the skills to take care of your uncle, right? The skills that he needs to match up providers with those who need care. That's one way we believe technology can be used to help make sure long-term care services are accessible.
A couple of years ago, there was, a Supreme Court case that kind of made some union dues, optional for some members. They didn't have to pay if they didn't want to. And kind of, these economic times, people are always cutting back. Kind of, what are you doing to kind of, to show your members to kind of hang in there and stay with you? And how's your membership doing, sticking through this crisis?
Yeah, for the majority of our members, dues are voluntary. All of our public home care members don't have to pay dues. They have a choice whether to become a member or not. And we're really proud that we've seen our membership numbers grow this year. They've not decreased, even though it's been it's hard for many families economically, given all of the tumult that folks have faced this year. And we believe that our members want to pay dues. They want to invest in their organization because we build power to fight the fights that our members know need fighting. And folks just don't want to sit back and watch as things happen to them. Our members want to be in the fight. They want to be on the front lines, and they want a chance at making sure they can fight for something better. And hundreds of thousands of people have found that place in our union. It's a place to fight. It's a place to make sure you have a voice.
Yeah, kind of, one thing that's kind of interesting is, the long-term care workers are incredibly diverse. They're from all over the country, and I think they're predominantly women. Can you kind of give us kind of the demographics and kind of the picture of your membership?
I'm happy to. Super proud that our membership looks like California in terms of our demographics. We are a predominantly people of color union, mainly women, about 80% women. Many of our members overwhelmingly are immigrants. You come to our meetings, they look like United Nations, even on Zoom. We're speaking 8 languages at the same time. And we believe that part of our power comes from our diversity. That is, our union is a place that no matter where you come from, what you look like, what language you speak, who you love, what your abilities are, we all are fighting for the same thing. And we believe in the power of the diverse collective.
As you were saying, we're having an aging population, and we're going to need more kind of long-term care assistants, more nurses. Kind of what are you guys doing, to recruit new members and kind of to grow that workforce in the future?
So we have, one of the things that we do is that we partner with an education and training fund that is really looking at innovative ways to recruit, retain, and train folks who want to be caregivers. Many of our members care for someone that they know, right? It's a family member, it's a neighbor, it's someone that they have known for some time. And they didn't expect to be a caregiver, right? And we want to make sure that we fight and we make these jobs that are family sustaining jobs, so that if someone wants to see a future in care work, that they can see the possibility of doing work that's all about loving and caring for someone and being able to raise a family and take care of yourself. So a lot of what we do is about training, it's about education, but also making sure, again, that the wages, the benefits reflect the value of the work our members do.
Yeah, just kind of like, for example, like what is the wage discrepancy between a nurse in a long-term care facility versus a nurse in a hospital, for example?
Yeah, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but there's anywhere between a 20 or 30% pay difference, I would say,
Wow.
between, let's say, a CNA who works in a nursing home and one who works in a hospital. It's quite a significant difference.
Fascinating, fascinating.
And it's mind you, it's the same work, right?
Right.
It's all about how our society values long-term care, right, as opposed to acute care services.
Right. That's fascinating. I guess kind of to go back to our previous question, kind of, 2020 has brought a lot of things out, and kind of, out of nowhere came this big conversation about, racial equality and kind of, how to make the world, I guess, a fairer, more just in the future. Kind of, I guess kind of what is your union and your role kind of in that conversation?
Well, here's a surprise. I'm a Black woman.
You are, yeah.
I am. And so I know, firsthand the realities, right, of what race in this country means, right? And more importantly, our members know it, right? They live it every single day. And the thing about home care workers, caregivers, is that we know, we have an analysis that so much of the reason that our wages and benefits are not reflective of the work that we do is because our work has been historically undervalued. It has been historically under-resourced. And that is because it is the work that slave women once did, right? The work of taking care of a family, of
Right.
making sure folks are cared for and fed and cleaned, and right? That's the work that slave women once did. And then domestic workers, right? Servants, who were still the Black women, the brown women, right? The immigrant women 100 years ago, and they're the same women today. And so we believe that we have to dismantle systemic and structural racism. Our organization is unapologetically one that prides itself and aspires to be anti-racist. And we know that we have to dismantle structural racism if we're going to change the conditions that our members work in, right? Our country, our state gets the results that it gets because the system bears the fruit that it was designed to bear. And so part of how we fight and what we fight for is transforming the systems so that our members and other workers like us can stand a fair chance in this economy and in our society.
Yeah, fascinating. November 5th, we have a little election coming up, a couple interesting items coming up on the ballot proposition wise. Is there anything, you and your union are looking at or involved in coming up on the November ballot?
We are really super stoked for this election. We have trained over 1,000 of our members to be democracy captains with the goal of making sure they don't just get to the polls and vote themselves or get to the the mailbox and vote themselves, but that they turn out their friends, families, and neighbors to do the same. We are championing and campaigning for folks who we believe hold our values as candidates. We want to make sure we get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris elected. We are prioritizing 3 boards of supervisors races across the country, across the state. Senator Mitchell, who's a great friend in Los Angeles County, Rhodesia Ransom in San Joaquin County, Greg Fishman in Sacramento County. We are also prioritizing the Los Angeles County DA's race by endorsing George Gascon. And of course, their ballot propositions. Prop 15 is a priority of ours, as well as 25 and 22.
25 and 22. And I guess, into those propositions, I guess, what side are you on of each of them?
Oh, sure.
I guess we
We
could guess.
are we are yes on 15, we're yes on 25, and we're no on 22.
Okay. Interesting.
Those are the priorities. We've taken positions on other initiatives as well.
Oh, definitely. And then, I guess, turning to 2021, it doesn't look like this pandemic's going anywhere, going to next year. Kind of what are your legislative priorities looking into 2021?
So we want to make sure, again, I couldn't agree with you more. This pandemic is not going anywhere. And even if this pandemic goes away, we believe another one will come eventually, maybe not of the same scale. But making sure long-term care workers have access to the PPE, the paid time off, the training on proper infectious control protocols, and the support that they need to be able to take care of their patients, their residents, their consumers, as well as themselves, right? So making sure workers are protected in the workplace will continue to be a top priority of ours. And as I was talking about making sure our long-term care system is one that works for those who need care and for workers is going to be a huge priority of ours. And we hope to introduce legislation that we can move that really begins to work with our legislature and make sure our state has a long-term care system to be proud of.
Is there, I guess, a state or a model of long-term care out there that's really successful and working well that you guys point to, and that we could, I guess, emulate here in California?
I would say that there's a couple of different places where we look at the state of Washington, and for me, there's no state like California, right? Like the scale is just different, but we can look at things that have been done in places like Washington State and Oregon, and quite frankly, in other countries, in places in Europe, in Japan, where there are elements of a system that we believe can be modeled here in California to create the system that we need. And what I would point to from those places is that the private sector, workers, and government have come together to find solutions together. I think we need to take fresh eyes to what we currently have and think together, right? Entities that may not always sit down at a table together, but we think that we have to break new ground and think together creatively about what solutions are needed for a state like California, keeping in mind the realities of what the budget forecasts are going to be, over the next set of years.
No, definitely. Well, April, thank you so much. Definitely a lot of interesting things. I guess, is there anything we missed that you want to get out there before we go?
The other thing that I would say, I talked briefly about our support for Proposition 25. One of the things that I think makes our union unique and different is that we believe that worker and economic justice is critically important to the transformation that we need in this country, but so is housing justice, so is climate justice, so is restorative justice and immigrant justice and disability justice. So our members have a broad justice agenda that we fight for every day. And so we aren't just concerned with our paychecks and our benefits, but our members lead whole lives. And so our union seeks to find justice for the whole of who our members are.
Definitely. Well, April, thank you so much. If anybody wants to get a little more information about you or your union, how could we get a hold of you or follow you on social media?
I am on social media at April D. Verrett. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can also find us online at www.seiu2015.org.
All right. Well, thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thanks. You do the same.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Make sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube page, hit that notification bell, or rate or review wherever you listen to that podcast. Thanks to our producers, Phil and Vernon, and we'll be back with you on Friday.
Are called dreamers.